Hi everyone, welcome to WION Live broadcast from New York City. I'm your host, Susan Tehrani. First, let's get you up to speed with this hour's headlines before we go straight into our first story. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant is in Washington, D.C. for talks with the American leadership. Discussions to focus on U.S. heavy weapons for Israel, the war in Gaza, and rising Israel-Hezbollah tensions. Moscow vows retaliation against the United States for Ukraine's missile attack on Crimea, which killed at least 4 people and injured 151 others. Russian officials have said the conflict is entering the most dangerous escalatory phase to date. Meanwhile, Israeli commission investigating suspected wrongdoings in government purchases of submarines and missile boats from Germany issues warning to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Chinese President Xi Jinping holds bilateral meeting with Polish counterpart Duda in Beijing. The talks take place as the two nations enter the 75th anniversary of establishment of diplomatic relations. Ins Sunayana concludes a visit to Mauritius Port St. Louis. The 2-day visit saw participation of Indian Navy and Mauritius National Coast Guard personnel during joint yoga session on occasion of International Day of Yoga and sports fixtures. The Japanese yen weakened yet again, hitting a new low for near 160 level. This has raised concern in Japan, where officials are worried about a weakening currency. IPL performers get a chance on the big stage for Team India. Shubman Gill will lead a young side for a 5-match T20 series against Zimbabwe after the ongoing World Cup. Okay, starting off with Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant's visit to the United States. He's here where he will meet with senior government officials and discuss the future of the war in Gaza. Gallant is accompanied by the Israeli Defense Forces Deputy Chief of Staff. Here in the United States, he will discuss unfreezing the shipment of the heavy-duty bomb to Israel, transition of the Gaza war to Phase 3, and about the escalating tensions on border with Lebanon. The hostilities between Israel and Lebanon have ratcheted up in recent days, with frequent exchange of heavy fire between IDF and Hezbollah, stoking fears of a wider conflagration in the region. Before setting off to Washington, where he will meet his counterpart, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, as well as Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Gallant insisted that Israel is prepared for any action on all fronts that may be required in Gaza, Lebanon, and in more areas. Israel's defense minister was invited to the Pentagon by Lloyd Austin during a phone call last week to discuss the security situation in the Middle East. He's also expected to meet CIA Director William Burns and Special Envoy Amos Hochstein.
In these meetings, I will discuss developments on the Gaza front, the Lebanon front, and they have a crucial importance at this time. We are prepared for any action that may be required in Gaza, Lebanon, and in other places as well.
Gallant's visit comes amid a public spat between the Biden administration and Benjamin Netanyahu about weapons holdup. Israel's prime minister went public with the criticism of the United States, repeating claims that U.S. President Joe Biden was presiding over a dramatic drop in arms shipments to Israel. In response, the U.S. called Netanyahu's video statements, quote, unproductive and completely untrue.
I highly appreciate President Biden's and the US administration's support of Israel. Since the beginning of the war, the US supplied us with a very important support, both in spirit and material, with defensive and offensive means. But over the last 4 months, there has been a dramatic decline in arms supplies from the US to Israel.
While lambasting his steadfast ally, Netanyahu also added that he believes the issue of withholding arms for Israel will be resolved in the near future. Netanyahu himself is due to visit the United States to address a joint session of Congress scheduled for July 24th.
I'm willing to take personal attacks for the security of the State of Israel. As Prime Minister of Israel, my job is to do everything to ensure that our heroic fighters have the best of weapons. In light of what I have heard in the past 24 hours, I hope and believe that this matter will be resolved soon.
Ahead of his visit, Gallant stressed on the importance of Israel's relations with Washington, calling it an important and central ally. Earlier this year, he had clashed with Netanyahu, saying that there should be no Israeli rule in post-war Gaza. Netanyahu, on the other hand, is in troubled waters trying to keep his government together as the far-right members of his cabinet threaten to topple coalition opposed to the idea of any future independent Palestinian state. All right, staying with the story, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that he's ready for a partial deal with Hamas to return some hostages. Netanyahu said that after the end of the intense phase in the Gaza Strip, Israel would redeploy some forces to the north, primarily for defensive purposes.
אבל אחרי סיום השלב העצים, תהיה לנו אפשרות להעתיק חלק מהכוח צפונה. ואנחנו נעשה את זה. קודם כל למטרות הגנה, ושנית, כדי להחזיר גם את התושבים שלנו הביתה. אם נוכל, נעשה את זה בדרך מדינית, אם לא, נעשה את זה בדרך אחרת. אבל אנחנו נחזיר את כולם הביתה, את כל תושבי הצפון וגם תושבי הדרום.
כלומר, זה בטווח של חודש.
סיום השלב העצים?
כן, עד חודש.
זה קרוב מאוד.
Israeli officials have described Rafah as the last Hamas stronghold in the Gaza Strip. In early May, troops entered the southern city on the besieged territory's border with Egypt. And despite global alarm over the fate of Palestinian civilians sheltering there, Netanyahu's interview to Channel 14 network is his first within Israeli media since the war began with Hamas's October 7th attack. Netanyahu's interview was aired while his defense minister arrived in Washington for talks on the Gaza war and surging cross-border tensions with Lebanon's Hezbollah.
In these meetings, I will discuss developments on the Gaza front, the Lebanon front, and they have a crucial importance at this time. We are prepared for any action that may be required in Gaza, Lebanon, and in other places as well.
Meanwhile, Lebanon's Hezbollah-affiliated Minister of Public Works and Transport has dismissed allegations that the Iran-backed group is using Beirut airport to store Iranian arms. He called the allegations as ridiculous. A report in a British daily quoting an airport worker said that Beirut's Rafiq Hariri International Airport is being used to store a variety of weapons, including ballistic missiles, unguided artillery rockets, and laser-guided anti-tank guided missiles.
The airport has been under attack not from today but for decades and has always been a destination to discredit Lebanon's reputation. I am holding this press conference to clarify that everything that has been written in the Telegraph is false and to say that there are no weapons entering or leaving Beirut airport. For me, the Israeli enemy is an enemy.
Violent clashes broke out between Palestinian and Israeli supporters in Los Angeles, California, leading to at least one arrest. Protesters gathered in front of an Orthodox synagogue in Pico Robertson neighborhood when the altercations erupted. Pro-Palestinian protesters reportedly blocked the people from entering the Jewish house of worship to attend Israel real estate event. Pro-Palestine demonstrators and counter-protesters draped in the Israeli national flag, masks, and Palestinian keffiyehs. An Israeli kippah traded punches, shoved and wrestled each other to the ground, and used bear sprays. The officers in the riot gear were with weapons drawn, surrounded the perimeters. Some amongst the protesters attempted to break the crowd. LAPD tried to intervene between the two scuffling sides that declared the gathering as unlawful assembly. By noon, it was unclear how many detentions were made or the extent of injuries sustained by those involved in this scuffle. But the area to the synagogue was cleared. Violent incidents related to anti-Semitism and Islamophobia have skyrocketed in the United States since Hamas rampaged through southern Israel on October 7th. Los Angeles witnessed most of the most violent scenes during the wave of pro-Palestinian encampments at the American educational institutions. Well, it's a crucial week for Democratic President Joe Biden and his rival Republican former President Donald Trump as they head into one of the most consequential presidential debates in decades. And both candidates are leaving no stone unturned to prep for Thursday's debate on CNN. Clearing his schedule, Joe Biden has hid himself at Camp David in Maryland, where he will hold intensive practice sessions ahead of his first 2024 presidential debate with Donald Trump, seen as crucial for the upcoming election. The president's team is hopeful of a strong performance by Biden in order to dispel the narrative that he's too old and mentally unfit for another term. But many insiders fear the president could be exposed after a string of gaffes and awkward public appearances. According to reports, Joe Biden is planning to go on the offensive against Donald Trump. He's likely to underscore the voters' choice between a steady leader and a convicted felon that, quote unquote, is a threat to democracy. President Biden is aware that Trump may go after his son Hunter Biden, especially after Hunter was recently convicted on 3 felony charges related to the purchase of an illegal firearm while being addicted to drugs. In the past, too, Trump has also raised questions about Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings with his father and when his father was vice president. And this could dominate the debate as well. For Donald Trump, the debate will give him a chance to move beyond the blanket coverage of the criminal conviction last month in the hush money case here in New York. Trump's camp plans to make Biden defend his administration's record on immigration and inflation. According to senior campaign advisor Byron Hughes, Trump will also question Biden on how he's dealing with a world on fire, referring to the Israel-Hamas war and Russia's assault against Ukraine. It's been 4 years since the rivals last shared a stage. The showdown between the two oldest candidates marks the first debate in history between a sitting president and a former one, taking place before either candidate is their party's official nominee. Biden and Trump will debate at a CNN studio in Atlanta with no audience. According to negotiated debate setup from the Biden team, there will be no opening statements and each candidate's microphone will be muted except when it is his turn to speak. No props or pre-written notes will be allowed on stage and candidates will be given only a pen, a pad of paper, and a bottle of water.
We'll begin with the fight against the coronavirus. President Trump, do you have a plan?
It has been 39 years since the Kanishka bombing attack on Air India Flight 182, which claimed the lives of 329 people in 1985. It is one of the deadliest aviation incidents involving terrorism when an Air India flight named Kanishka en route Montreal to New Delhi crashed into the Atlantic Ocean. Paying homage to the bombing victims, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar said that the attack anniversary was a reminder why terrorism should never be tolerated. Jaishankar's remarks comes amid a diplomatic strife between New Delhi and Ottawa over the killing of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. India's Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri called the bombing one of the most reprehensible acts of terror committed against India. Indian High Commissioner to Canada Sanjay Kumar paid homage to the victims of the tragedy that is in Ottawa. The Indian High Commission in Canada led the memorial service for the victims of the Air India Flight 182 monument at Commissioners Park in Ottawa.
No government in the world should overlook the threat of terrorism emanating from its territories for mere political gains. Human lives are much more important, and the transitory political interests are just transitory. All terrorist activities should be met with exemplary legal and social actions.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau also issued a statement on the National Day of Remembrance for the victims of terrorism. And here's a quote from him. Today, we remember and honor every Canadian whose life was cut short or forever changed. This remains the deadliest terror attack in Canada's history. He further said that Canada is doing its part to counter terrorism and violent extremism as well. Trudeau explained how Canada is doing its part to counter terrorism. However, the statement did not make any mention of perpetrators of the terror attack. On June 23, 1985, the Montreal-New Delhi Air India flight exploded 45 minutes before it was to have landed at London's Heathrow Airport. According to reports, Sikh militants were held responsible for the bombing, which was believed to be an act of retaliation for Operation Blue Star earlier on June 22nd. The Canadian police said that the investigations into the bombing of the Air India Flight 182 remains active and ongoing. Okay, here in the United States, the weather has not been playing games where more than 1 million people are now under flood warnings in the U.S. Midwest. Days of heavy rain has forced evacuations and rescues in several states, including Iowa, South Dakota, where some rivers reached record high. Take a look. Okay, well, let's talk about some apps here in the United States that have been gaining prominence. Education apps developed by China are creating quite a buzz here in the United States. Now, American students are turning to an AI-enabled Chinese app to help them with their homework. This year, from February to May, Chinese apps like Question.ai and Goth were among the top 3 free educational apps in the U.S. on both iOS and Google Play. These Chinese educational apps use generative AI to help students study. They provide information on subjects ranging from science, engineering, and math to economics, physics, chemistry, and literature. All one needs to do is take a photo of their homework and upload it on the app. The app will automatically generate solutions accompanied by detailed step-by-step guides and explanations as well. Free for basic use, these apps, however, charge a minimal fee for additional functions. The popularity of these Chinese apps comes amidst the ongoing U.S. TikTok battle. Short-form video platform TikTok faces the risk of getting banned here in the United States unless its parent company, ByteDance, divests its U.S. operations. While these AI-powered Chinese apps are quite popular here in the U.S. market, monetization remains a major challenge. Both Goth and Question.ai failed to make it into the fiscal year 2024 first quarter top 10 grossing apps. All right, well, Host USA began their Copa America campaign with a win. Captain Christian Pulisic's goal and an assist helped the hosts beat Bolivia 2-0 in their opening match of the tournament. USA's Pulisic found some room and netted into the top right corner in just the third minute in Texas to give his team the lead. It was his 30th goal in 69 international matches. The Americans doubled their lead in the 44th minute. Pulisic collected the ball in central midfield and set up Florian Balogun, who scored with a low shot into the bottom corner. It was the 22-year-old's fourth goal in 13 appearances. Pulisic joined Clint Dempsey as the only two U.S. players to score a goal and provide an assist in an America Copa match. The 11th ranked USA controlled possession with over 60% of the ball and had 8 shots on goal to be Bolivia's 3. The Americans are one of the 6 invited guests to South America's championship and will face Panama next on Friday in Atlanta, Georgia. And finally, are you a fan of hip-hop music? If yes, our next story is for you. Rapper Rick Ross's personal belongings are set to go up on sale, from his high-end sneakers to art and music memorabilia. Know what all you can get in this special auction. I leave you with these visuals, and I'll see you tomorrow.
So, I mean, Rick Ross is one of the biggest names in hip-hop, and, you know, got to start obviously in the early 2000s, and everyone knows the